Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a fascinating literary and theological code that's been hiding in plain sight within ancient biblical texts. Now, most of us who've read these historical accounts have definitely noticed that certain details seem to repeat themselves, right? But today we're looking at something much more profound than just a recurring detail.
Okay, let's zoom in on a single number, 40. If you're familiar with these texts at all, you know this number pops up absolutely everywhere. We're talking from Noah weathering the storm in the ark to the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, all the way up to Jesus fasting in the desert. But why? I mean, is it just a coincidence? Is 40 the ultimate ancient lucky lottery number?
Well, as our source material reveals, this isn't just a basic mathematical unit. Not at all. It's actually a meticulously structured motif, and it runs completely unbroken from the book of Genesis all the way to the book of Acts. It spans across different authors, totally different eras, and various genres of literature, yet it points in the exact same theological direction every single time. It is a deliberate, precise, theologically loaded pattern. Section 1, Decoding the number 40, a secret vocabulary. To really crack this code, we have to recalibrate how we understand ancient storytelling and look at the text the way a first-century reader would.
See, in this ancient context, writers used what we can basically call a theological vocabulary. Numbers weren't just simple math, they carried a deep cultural register. For instance, 7 represented completeness, 12 represented the covenant people. So to the original readers, 40 wasn't just a strict measurement of time, whether days or years, it was a specific theological vocabulary word signifying a period of sustained testing. Think of it less like a literal calendar and more like a giant neon sign flashing under construction. When they saw the number 40, they instinctively knew something huge was being prepared and something was about to break through.
Section 2, Foundations of the Pattern, laying the groundwork in the epic stories. Let's look at some of the most famous historical accounts in the text to see this foundational blueprint in action.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Every single 40 follows this exact, unbroken formula. Step 1 is the entry. It's always a moment of transition or really high pressure. Step 2 is the duration, a sustained testing. We aren't talking about a quick weekend trial here. It's long enough to actually transform the people going through it. Kind of like a really long layover, but obviously with much higher stakes. And finally, step 3 is the exit, a threshold crossing into a new covenant, a new commission, or just an entirely new beginning.
Think about Noah's flood, for example. This is a brilliant illustration of the rule of contrast. The 40 days of rain weren't just some sudden random punishment. They were the comprehensive process of a judgment that had already been decided. But look closely at the exit. The 40 days weren't the end of the story, right? They were the passage through judgment to an entirely new beginning. Noah stepped out onto dry ground, a rainbow was set in the sky, and a brand new covenant was made with all living things. The broken world that went in was absolutely not the world that came out.
Now let's jump over to Mount Sinai. Here we actually get two 40s back to back. During the first 40 days, Moses is up there receiving the law. But on day 39, practically at the finish line, Israel builds a golden calf at the base of the mountain. Moses comes down on day 40, sees the violation and shatters the tablets. But he doesn't just give up. He turns around and goes right back up for a second 40 days of sustained intercession and pleading. And once again, an entirely new structure emerges when the testing ends. God relents, the covenant is renewed, and the tabernacle is constructed. The pattern holds beautifully.
Which brings us to the famous wilderness wandering. When Israel faced a 40-year generational testing in the wilderness, it was actually a direct response to a massive failure. The spies had seen giants and fortified cities, and they basically just refused to trust. So they entered a 40-year duration. But look at the exit. It wasn't permanent destruction. That exit resulted in a completely new generation, led by Joshua, finally crossing the Jordan River to inherit the promise. The old generation passed away, and a new one emerged. Again, the pattern holds.
Section 3, Prophets, Giants, and Cities, Accelerating the History. Let's dive into the historical books and see how this pattern adapts during the eras of prophets and kings without ever skipping a beat.
We see this exact sustained pressure across 3 wildly different stories here. First up, the prophet Elijah, fleeing in absolute despair into the wilderness for 40 days, fed by an angel for a journey he didn't even know he was on. The exit? He reaches the mountain of God and gets 3 brand new assignments. Next, we have Goliath, stepping out morning and evening for 40 days straight to systematically humiliate the army of Israel. The exit? A shepherd boy named David arrives with 5 smooth stones, creating a massive turning point for the nation. Finally, Jonah giving the city of Nineveh a 40-day warning of destruction. The exit? Total repentance from the king down to the poorest citizen. In every single story, sustained pressure predictably produces a massive breakthrough.
And there's this really fascinating insight here when it comes to Jonah and Nineveh. The 40 days wasn't just a ticking time bomb for destruction. It was a necessary window for the sustained testing to actually do its work. Those 40 days didn't change the divine plan. Rather, the pressure of those 40 days revealed the true repentant condition of the city.
Section 4. Fulfilling the pattern, the ultimate mirror. As we transition into the Gospels, we find that the Jesus narrative isn't just following the rule. It's designed to deliberately mirror and complete the ancient wilderness pattern we just looked at.
We are looking at a direct contrast here between Israel's 3 ancient failures and Jesus' 3 refusals of temptation. Where Israel spent 40 years grumbling for food, testing God, and worshiping a golden calf for an easier path, Jesus spends 40 days in the desert and totally passes the test. He refuses the bread, he refuses to test God by jumping from the temple, and he refuses to bow to the devil for all the kingdoms of the world. And get this, he answers each temptation by quoting from Deuteronomy, which is the exact book that records Israel's wilderness failure. I mean, that is just masterful theological recapitulation right there.
But you know, the parallels totally don't stop there. Both Israel's 40 years of wandering and Jesus' 40 days of fasting concluded at the exact same geographical point, the Jordan River. Following his 40 days, Jesus crosses the threshold to launch the public ministry of the kingdom. The exit brings the Sermon on the Mount, the miracles, and the calling of disciples. A brand new covenant community is inaugurated. Yet again, the pattern holds perfectly.
And guess what? Even the early church experienced this architectural timeline. Look at the window between the crucifixion around 30 AD and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans in 70 AD. It's exactly 40 years, one generation. During this 40-year window, the early church experienced explosive global expansion, and every single one of the New Testament letters was written. This was a critical period of sustained testimony and opportunity, preparing the church for its global mission far beyond the boundaries of the Old Covenant and the physical temple.
Section 5. What the pattern means, the core takeaway. So, we've seen all the data across this historical timeline, but what does the pattern actually mean for us?
Well, our source analysis argues that if you look closely, there is a profound promise embedded in this pattern. The 40 is not a punishment, even if it feels like a completely desolate wilderness. Just like Elijah exhausted under that broom tree, it might feel like the end, but it's actually a necessary preparation for what comes next. And the absolute most crucial takeaway? Every single biblical 40 has an exit. Not one of them lasts forever. And the breakthrough on the other side fundamentally requires that sustained pressure to exist in the first place.
Which brings us to the ultimate theological claim embedded in the text. God does not waste 40s. Whether it's producing a new world from a flood, a new generation from a desert, or a global mission from the early church, the cost of the sustained pressure is exactly what produces the new beginning. The waiting is never wasted. It's actively building the threshold you are about to cross.
So as we wrap up this explainer on the hidden literary architecture of the Bible, I want to leave you with this to chew on. Think about a season of intense waiting or pressure you might be going through right now. Because if this pattern holds true, your 40s is never permanent and it always serves as preparation. So ask yourself, how might this ancient pattern apply to your life right now? What incredible breakthrough is being prepared on the other side of your 40?